Hey guys, Jason here. So there's these teachers from the deep, and when you trace the oldest stories on Earth, you don't find the gods descending from the sky first. You find gods rising from the water. So in Mesopotamia, the Babylonians, they spoke of Oannes. It's half man, half fish who emerged from the Persian Gulf at dawn. Now, he wasn't a monster. He was actually a teacher. He brought agriculture, architecture, language, and the very foundation of civilization itself. And then by night, he would actually slip back beneath the waves and only to rise again the next day, continuing the actual lesson with the people. And Oannes wasn't alone. He came with a company of sages, and they called themselves the Apkallu. They were actually fish-cloaked beings who passed down knowledge, instructed kings, and set the order of society. Even the scribes admitted this wasn't human intervention. It was given. It was actually revealed. Humanity didn't make civilization. Civilization was taught. So let's now move east to India. The first avatar of Vishnu was Matsya the Fish. And in the Puranas, Matsya warns of Manu of a coming flood, guiding him to build a great boat, very much like an ark, to preserve life. And again, it's not just survival, it's actual instruction. Matsya teaches Manu about Dharma, and about the cycles of time, and about to seed the new world after the waters recede. And then if you actually cross over to Africa, the Dogon of Mali tell of the Nommo, amphibious beings from the star system Sirius. Pretty wild. The Nommo arrived in a great vessel, or so it's said, that splashed down in the water, and they too were described as half human and half fish. And guess what they brought? They brought astronomy, cosmology, weaving, and even farming. They recognized society and they actually reorganized it. Different continents, different languages, different millennia, and it's the same bloody archetype. You know, not sky gods, but water gods, and not conquerors, but always described as teachers, always bringing order out of the chaos, and they're always linked to the depths. But this is where it gets extremely weird. Modern UFO reports, they don't just talk about flying saucers all the time. They talk about USOs, Unidentified Submerged Objects. I mean, we've seen lights moving under the sea at impossible speeds, and we've seen craft rising silently from the ocean, dripping but still glowing in a way, and then vanishing back into the clouds or back into the depths. I mean, entire naval encounters where fleets watched discs dive into the waves as though water and air made no difference at all. So I guess the pattern never really ended, right? The beings of the water didn't just belong to ancient myth. They're still here. They're slipping between dimensions, using the ocean as a veil per se. And then again, maybe that's the point. The water was never just a habitat. It was a symbol. So the deep ocean is the unknown, the unconscious, the formless, the place from which all life rises. And if the sky gods enslave, the water gods, they instruct. They seem to pull wisdom from the depths and deliver it to the surface, which kind of raises the question, who do you trust more? You know, the ones who came to rule from above, or the ones who emerged from below to teach? So to me, what makes the fish teacher myth extremely convincing is its consistency. You don't get scattered random details, you actually get the same framework repeated across culture after culture after culture. So in Mesopotamia, the Apkallu aren't just passing curiosities, they're the foundation of kingship itself. I mean, Babylonian inscriptions list their names, their deeds, their cities, and everywhere they visited. Civilization didn't bloom organically. It arrived, delivered in stages with Oannes and his companions servicing day after day after day. And then in India, the Matsya avatar isn't just about saving life from the flood. It's about the transfer of wisdom itself. Manu doesn't just float in his boat, he actually listens, and he receives teachings that will seed the next age. So the Dogon themselves take it even further. Their Nommo aren't mythic abstractions, they're cosmology packed with details about Sirius, a binary star system that's actually invisible to the naked eye, until modern telescopes actually confirmed it. So how did an African tribe actually know this? Well, the answer was extremely simple to them. And the Nommo, they told us. They said the amphibious ones taught us the structure of the cosmos. And in the modern era, the reports line up completely. Shag Harbor incident in 1967, glowing craft plunging into the water off Nova Scotia, witnessed by multiple residents, tracked by radar, and then pursued by the Canadian Navy. And then we have the Tic Tac encounters right off the coast of California in 2004, craft dropping from 80,000 feet to sea level in seconds, and then vanishing into the water or going back up into space. Fravor said it himself. He said it went from 60,000 feet to the surface of the ocean in less than a second, and then it disappeared. So it's the same motif over and over and over. The beings of knowledge, the luminous craft slipping in and out of the water, not the stars, but the actual sea. Not heaven above, but the abyss below. And then there's something actually poetic about that, because in every tradition, water symbolizes the formless. The womb of creation, the unconscious mind, the depth you can't see, but you can feel it. I mean, in Hindu thought, the cosmic ocean is where Vishnu reclines, and it's where worlds dissolve and are born again. And then you have the Bible, right? Creation begins with the spirit hovering over the waters. Almost every culture, the waters are the primal field. So maybe these beings weren't just aquatic. Maybe they were teaching through metaphor. They weren't saying we live under the waves. They were saying wisdom rises from the depths. Civilization itself comes from the unknown ocean of consciousness. So let that sink in. And then that's where the Vedantic lens cracks it wide open, because what is the self, the Atman, if not the ocean beneath all waves of experience? Thoughts? They're ripples. And events? Well, they're tides. Civilizations rise and fall like waves crashing on the shore. But the water, the depth, it never, ever changes. So the Apkallu, the Nommo, the Matsya, maybe they weren't just bringing farming techniques and star charts. Maybe they were pointing toward that depth of trying to nudge humanity into remembering the knowledge. It doesn't come from the surface. It comes from going inward. And then here's the strange thought, right? Maybe the reason these beings keep appearing in aquatic form isn't because they literally have fins. Maybe, and just maybe, it's because they're reminders. They wear the water like a costume to teach us that wisdom always comes from the place we're most afraid to enter, the formless depth within. Which means the real mystery isn't whether the Apkallu lived in the Persian Gulf, or the Nommo actually came from Sirius, or the Tic Tacs hide in our oceans. But the real mystery is why we still resist diving into the ocean that never left us. Okay, so then what do we do with all this, right? Civilizations rising from fish-cloaked sages? Floods survived because a god with gills whispered the warning? Tribes in Africa holding knowledge about stars 8.6 light years away because amphibious teachers told them? And in our own age, Navy pilots watching glowing craft vanish into the ocean like it's not even there? I think it's too much to shrug off, and it's just too consistent, and it's too ancient and too modern. The water gods, to me, are not a myth. They're a pattern. But then again, this is where it bends your mind. So what if they're not coming from the ocean at all? What if the ocean is just the metaphor, like the mask? What if they rise from the same place Matsya rose, the same place Oannes emerged, and the same place the Nommo swam from? The depth of consciousness itself. I mean, if you really think about it, the surface of the mind is chatter, ripples, storms, and that's where the tricksters play, where the grays confuse, and where Maya keeps the drama spinning. But the depth, the silence beneath that, that's where knowledge is. That's where sages of every tradition pointed. Dive inward, they said. Go deeper than the thoughts. And when you finally do, what shows up? Not nothing. Presence. A knowing so big it feels alien. And a wisdom so ancient it feels non-human. And a love so massive it can only appear as a being. The fish gods may not be external at all. They may be what it looks like when the self rises from the depths and meets you at the shoreline of your own awareness. And that would explain why they always teach and they never ever conquer, and why they bring wisdom and not weapons, and why they appear luminous, calm, and even patient. They're not overlords, people. They're reflections of the deepest part of you, surfacing in a form that your frightened surface mind can recognize. The ocean out there was just the rehearsal. The real ocean is here. So when the next witness reports a glowing craft slipping under the waves, or even a contactee swears they meant tall aquatic beings with eyes like galaxies, don't rush to decide if it was aliens or angels, or amphibians from Sirius. Ask the only question that actually matters. What ocean did they really come from? Because the twist is this. You don't need to wait on a shoreline in Babylon, or Mali, or on the deck of a Navy destroyer to meet the fish gods. You just have to sit still, close your eyes, and dive. And when the mind grows silent enough, when the noise stops, something rises from the deep. And if you can meet it without fear, you might realize what the ancients already knew. The water gods were never separate. They were the self surfacing in mythic form, not saviors from the outside, teachers from the inside, which leaves us with the most unsettling and liberating possibility of them all. The beings we've been waiting for are just us, remembering what we already knew. Thanks for listening, guys. Namaste.